We are just 3 days away, ladies and gentlemen, from a massive match, the Copa America play in Canada and Trinidad and Tobago. And to start this discussion today, Oliver Platt, as my number one fan, as you rightfully showed the audience this morning, or this evening by the time this airs, who is facing the most pressure other than you as my number one fan to answer this question well?
It's Alphonso Davies. It's always Alphonso Davies for Canada. And I think, you know, when things go wrong for this team, and I don't want to start with a negative, but no matter who deserves the blame, it's Alphonso Davies that's the face of it, right? Who's most associated with this team. And if it doesn't go well for Canada on Saturday, that won't change fairly or unfairly. So I just think increasingly, you know, you look at that Jamaica game last time out as a classic example. The way Alphonso Davies goes, this team goes in the first half, he's fantastic. He's dynamic. He's getting forward, scoring this goal. You know, the Alphonso Davies at his best when no one else in Concacaf has a player like that. No one else in Concacaf, I don't think, has an attack like Canada does when they're in that full flow. And then in the second half, you see the other side of it, right? Which is some poor decisions, some giveaways. Davies was responsible for some of those, and a game that slips away from them. So his importance to Canada is greater than anyone else on this team. I don't think that's up for debate. And I think the pressure is on his shoulders more than anyone else as a result. Increasingly also because of the makeup of this squad, right? Vittoria out, Boyan out, Hoyler out, some of the significant leaders of this team. I think it heightens, you know, the amount of attention and eyeballs that are on Alphonso Davies and whether he can kind of take this team into a new era without the old guard and be the true leader of this team. So for me, the most pressure, you know, Davies is just at a different scale than anyone else on this team or associated with it.
Jordan Wilson as the resident duck on our team, with pressure like water rolls off your back. You don't feel it. So how can you judge fairly who's feeling the most? If you had a hunch, though, the head honcho, who would you assign that pressure to?
I'm like, how could I not start by not quacking like a nice good quack quack? Look, it has to be for me. I can understand Davies being the player that everyone looks to if he's contributing and he does this for Bayern, but can he do for Canada? We're gonna understand that rhetoric for another decade or even beyond. But for me, it has to go down to Mauro Biello. Like knowing this guy and knowing his how he's been with the Canadian national team and how he's respected, he's a person that you want around. But if you don't get a TNT game right and you lose, he will be the guy that fumbled the bag not once but twice. Everyone knows that in November, it's like you kind of got shell shocked with Jamaica, and Boyan did the juggling, and the game turned on its head, and it just seemed like a bad night. But to have them back to back months separated as well, that will just be tainted in his legacy or next to his name. So I will also say, to Wheels' point when we said last week, it was a move that was probably needed to happen, but it was still bold for Mauro to go out and do it, to not have a Vittoria, to not maybe have a Hoyler, to not have certain like leaders in the team or guys that you normally go to. But that will also play with it. It's like, oh, was this the time to really do that and maybe mess things up? So it needs to be a performance where you could see Canada attack. You could see Canada just being their best selves, and the Laryea and the David and the Davies and the Buchanan, they seem to just have a glow about them and playing the right way. And again, in today's game, it's like you look at the players, but Biello will be under the spotlight full stop because this is his squad that he selected. So I think he's feeling a bit of pressure, but I'm also feeling a bit optimistic. I think this will be a match where there are goals and you can see Canada playing their best football. But if they don't, Biello's head is the one that everyone's going to be looking at.
We got a player, we got a coach. Gareth, are you going to complete the theme here?
Probably. Decent answers from my friends and colleagues, Jordan and Oliver. It's the funny thing about Davies, though, is that unless he plays like a 9 or a 10 out of 10, like the standards are held so high for the way that he plays that if he comes out and is an 8, people are like, I'm expecting more. That's just the nature when it comes to Davies. And Biello, I get it for all those reasons. He needs to set up this team for success, but he has a tag that reads interim on his title. And why is he still an interim head coach? It's because the real pressure is on the board of directors at Canada Soccer, because it's been 205 days to this day since John Herdman stepped down as head coach of the Canadian men's national team. And we still have an interim manager in charge. And they're the ones that believe that this interim staff is good enough to take this team to Copa America. So they put their faith in Biello, and, it's not without any reason. This isn't an anti-Biello sentiment, but I think most people would have hoped that a permanent head coach or new manager for the national team would have been named by now. And the fact that we're still kind of in this state of flux, that's on them more so than anyone else. So I think inevitably the players will take responsibility. The coaching staff will take responsibility for whatever plays out this weekend. But the true culprits and the attention, I believe, will be firmly cast on the decision-making of the board when it's all said and done.
That's certainly the worst case scenario, and I want to explore that a little bit, not because
be
I'm feeling
too.
particularly negative
positive
today. The worst case scenario, yes, would be the following question, Gareth. You're right. Let me phrase this properly, because I want to ensure we are doing 360-degree storytelling here. We're going to spend the days leading up talking about everything around the game, and then as we get closer to kickoff, the hype, the optimism, the positivity, we'll get there. But we're not there yet, Jordan Wilson, so I'm going to ask you this question. If Canada does lose to Trinidad and Tobago, fail to qualify for Copa America, still have the interim tag, et cetera, what would that mean for this program, perhaps even this association?
Well, the handsome Adam Jenkins, since you're talking about all of us and bigging us up, let me big you up, you handsome sly devil. You used the word that I'm going to use, and you said hype. The hype would be gone for Canada if they lost to TNT. Now, for many people, Wheels has followed this game for a very long time and looked at it closely, and you've seen talent. Ollie, you've done the same. I've had my part to play in it. Adam, you've seen it as well. But the people that are just catching on to the hype for World Cup qualifiers were like, oh, Canada, soccer. That would all kind of just go down the drain if they're looking to play better competition. Copa America for other past players or in the past would have been a dream to play better teams in South America. And you go and fumble the bag. And then now you have 2026 World Cup or these Nation League games. I think it's just a huge step backwards. Like, this is a time I was thinking when Canada played Jamaica and lost at BMO, that this was probably one of the lowest moments in a while. But to go and lose to TNT when you know it's a must-win game, this would be catastrophic, and this would push the program back significantly. I didn't want to think like that. Naturally, I'm going to be an optimist. I think it's going to be their day on Saturday. But if it wasn't going to be so, I wouldn't know what to do, truthfully, as a fan.
Gareth Wheeler, feel free to keep the compliments flowing.
Oh yeah, it's a big one. It's hard to fathom a scenario where Canada will not be playing at Copa America, right? Like, I think the country's all ready for it, and I think it would completely go against the grain that Trinidad and Tobago would knock out this Canada team. That's how significant in terms of favorites they are heading into this game. If they don't, Jordan's absolutely right. The hype around this team, that shine that was rightly cast on this group through World Cup qualification, would it be completely off? And I think that mistrust in everything to do with Canada soccer would just come back to the forefront. I actually think the women's national team got off quite easy. The fact that they completely bombed out of the World Cup, the fact that they got back onto the field, put together some decent results, and then it was like a farewell to Christine Sinclair, right? And kind of that all seems like it's in the rearview mirror now. But on the biggest stage, they failed. And if the men's team fails to make the finals of this tournament, that won't look good as well. And I think it goes beyond the Canadian Soccer Association. They're going to get their critics, even if they do qualify, because that's the way that things work. But the players put their flags in the ground and said that our programs have come to a turning point. We are star players. We deserve more. We deserve better. And they've taken some really pointed actions to make that message be clear. If this team doesn't qualify, then what happens to that argument? Is that what the expectation is? Qualifying for one World Cup? Is that enough for this team to prove that they deserve to be compensated alongside some of the world's top footballing nations in the world? I think that some of those arguments might run a little hollow. Inevitably, the argument will come full circle and everyone will point fingers at the CSA anyways at the end of the day. So maybe it won't have that much of an impact. It's just more headaches, more dysfunction, more of all that nonsense that we don't want to delve into would certainly come to the forefront yet again. I can honestly see things that will be posted on social media by the same people all the time. It's just, I don't know if I can mentally take it. I just please
don't visualize it.
Please win this weekend. Oh, I just don't. I don't.
Okay, buddy.
Ollie, let me
I
set
don't
you up
wanna
this
go.
way. Aside from, according to one journalist at a 3-letter network, thank you very much, producer Holly, by the way, I can see that through the corner of my eyes. Aside from saving the Canadian Soccer Association a good chunk of money, which seems like a realistic outcome, according to some, how about this? What about this match will tell us, the media, the supporter, the viewer, the coach, the program, about how this group handles pressure? Because aside from the World Cup matches, this is the most pressure-packed moment that they will have faced in a while.
Well, I will be brave and go on record and say that, contrary to some reports, I do not think it would be a bad thing to qualify for the Copa America for this
Hot
team.
take, Potts at it
I'll
again.
say that.
Hot
Say
take.
that
That firstly.
Scorching.
Very, very hot take. Like I guess there's pressure on them this game, but there's with respect to Trinidad, there is such a big quality gulf that if they can't handle that kind of pressure, and I think they can. I'm not trying to be pessimistic here. I think this group is perfectly capable of winning on Saturday and winning handily. So I don't really look at it as, the most intense pressure situation they faced, even with the stakes, but I would look at, what if they fail to do it, I'd look at it a bit differently. I kind of think the hype is already gone to a certain extent. Like, certainly the momentum that was in the lead up to the 2022 World Cup has pretty much been squandered by the off-field hell that we've been in over the past year or two. I think qualifying for the Copa America is a chance to take some of that hype back, right? A chance to build some excitement around this team again. You're opening the Copa America against Messi and Argentina. Like that would be huge for this program. So I think it's more, I prefer to look at it more in a positive way, that we can start to rebuild this going into 2026 in the same way that we saw the excitement going into Qatar.
Great answer. Honestly, Ollie, I'm hard on you sometimes. That was a good answer.
Thank you.
Really
That's
good.
because I got my lucky mug.
That's right. You keep that up, buddy. We're so proud of you on this show.
Devil.
All the best to Robin. Congratulations as well to Dwayne for being named as part of that class. Two deserving Canadians very much. I'm going to use this very poorly attempted segue to say Dwayne De Rosario, Toronto FC, Richie Laryea. Oh my God, Gareth is having surgery. How was that for a transition?
Good
and
transition.
How's that for a blow to TFC and the Canadian men's national team? Because by my math, 3 months is a long time and there's some tournaments coming up.
No shaking or baking upcoming for Laryea for the foreseeable future. This is a significant blow for Toronto FC for multiple reasons. The first off, the game model that they want to play. Laryea playing not down the left, down the right. Like, Herdman's been playing players in that position exceptionally high, just like he did for the national team. I love a Kobe Franklin, players of that ilk, but no one can play that position better for Toronto FC than Richie Laryea. This also has to come with some regret. I was surprised that he played in the first game of the season, considering he hadn't been playing for Nottingham Forest. Even when you're playing to stay, or you're at least training or doing whatever you can to stay in shape, there's no like for like, there's no replicating getting on the field and playing match football. And even Herdman said coming out of that first game that he believed there was a small issue for whatever reason Richie can't shake. 3 months? He is out 3 months? I just wonder if there might be a little bit of regret about how the player was handled coming back. Like, he is one of, if not the most important player for Toronto FC this season. Now he's going to be out for the bulk of the start of the season. It's a crushing blow for a team that's already light on depth and, if we're going to be honest, light on top talent. And that's exactly what Laryea is.
Oliver Platt.
Yeah, I think there has to be regret around that. It seemed like going 70 minutes at the time was, for a player who hadn't played club football in some time, was pushing it. And then, I think from Herdman's own comments, it was the Monday or the next day they came into training that Laryea was feeling something from that match at the weekends. It's clearly kind of either developed or now been fully discovered the extent of it. And he's out for what will be, when you take the games he's already missed added to the ones he'll likely miss, probably nearly half of Toronto FC's season. So it's a massive loss for a player who's been brought in to be one of the big figures in this team. Like Will said, the way they play, whenever you play a system with wingbacks, I think your wingbacks need to be two of your best players. Like, you ask so much of them to really be able to impact the game in attack as well as to defend. And Laryea is clearly the strongest option they have in that regard. So that has a load of knock-on effects. Does Bernadeschi now have to play more wingback as he has done at the start of this season? Is he up for that? Or is he expecting to be moved back further forward when Richie's fully fit? Can Shaquille Marshall-Rutty step up after scoring that goal against NYCFC at the weekend? And just more broadly, like, can this team be good enough going forwards and in possession? Despite their record right now, they've got the lowest XG in the Eastern Conference in MLS, and they haven't brilliant with the ball. So these are all big questions for me with Laryea out.
Well, and even because it's a hamstring, Jordan, like, this, even when he comes back, he's got to be eased in. There's got like, he can't play in Copa America if he's going to be gone 3 months, even if it's right before, like, that hamstring's going to need to be managed, won't it?
No, absolutely. And like, the 3 months is really what is so disheartening, because that time you're coming back and there's no way that you're gonna feel sharp. You're gonna have some discomfort. And when I'm thinking about Laryea playing for Canada down that right side, yeah, you have Buchanan that is more than competent playing a wing back or even sometimes a winger. But Laryea is a guy that you can count on to be playing both ends, meaning he's getting into players' faces on the defensive end and kind of being an enforcer, but then blistering pace. And if you watch Canada play in the build up and the lead up to a lot of the goals, yes, of course it's the David, yes, of course it's the Laryea. But it is also oftentimes Laryea in terms of the hockey assist or the third pass or stealing the ball in the right positions and making runs forward. So for Toronto FC, but specifically, I'm just thinking about Canada, this is a huge loss, because he is just that guy that infuses the defense that transitions into the offense. And this is going to take him, we say 3 months, but 4 or 5 to really start looking like himself and the Richie that we know, especially such an explosive player, Wheels. Like, it's different if you're a center back. Even for me in my later career playing, it's like, yeah, I had a little bit of pace, but I'm not running 70 yards every game and trying to increase in speed. But that's Richie Laryea's game. That's how he plays. Like, his hamstrings need to feel nice and loose and ready. And to have that injury, it could just be such a detriment for this season.
Well, Gareth, we know that there's injuries leading up to Saturday's game, and we're going to see how Canada plays without some key players. But if you do the math, and again, we say all of this, understanding that they still have to beat Trinidad and Tobago to get in. But if they do that, it is 3 months today that Copa America begins. You talk about that easing in period and how desperately a player like Richie Laryea would love to play in a tournament like that. How does this group manage his return to play? Obviously, John Herdman now from the opposite perspective will have a say on how he'd like things done.
Yeah, well, one thing I think that, because Laryea can play down the right or the left, Sam Adekubi needs to get back healthy, get up to fit. He's going to have a long runway here, and he's about to, looks like he's closing in on making a return to Vancouver Whitecaps. It puts him finding his fitness and form as even more of a priority than it already has been. Maybe that plays Ali Ahmad in a different type of position. Maybe this will dictate the formation that Canada uses going forward based on the players that are available. I think there's a significant knock-on effect, because Laryea has, despite not playing for Nottingham Forest over a period of time, he has been ready, capable, and willing, and a very important piece to this Canadian men's national team in recent years. So this is not an easy player to replace what he brings to the team.
A story we will continue to monitor. We wish Richie all the best with his surgery, which will be taking place in London, England, very, very soon, and his road to recovery begins.